Hey, so it's the weekend, and I want to share with you what I have been learning this week. This is more, I use the weekends more for personal development, self-reflection. I want to share with you what I am researching and learning about. I am constantly researching and driving to learn more about myself, about emotions, how to reach my maximum human potential. So, what I have found challenging recently is shifting into a creative mindset and visualizing my future and driving my future in a direction that I want to go, and really using my life as a blank canvas, which is wonderful. It's a great strategy that I have used over the years and has served me well. And I have noticed that as I get into this creative space, I am having some fuzzy imagery in my brain, in my mind's eye. So I wanted to learn about ways to improve this, and I want to share with you what I have found and relay some concepts with you that I have used and that you may find useful, or techniques that help me gain clarity. So that's really what I'm driving towards in this presentation. So let me go ahead and share my screen now so we can go through this material together. Okay, so today, as I stated, we're going to go over visualization, imagination, some communication, and clarity of thought. So one of the struggles that I've had my whole life as I was looking back and thinking about my weaknesses and my strengths is I have lots of ideas, and I have issues verbalizing my ideas. And it's so clear in my mind as to what I'm doing and what I'm seeing as a possibility, but distilling that down into a communication with another person can be very difficult. And so it sent me on the several questions that I was asking myself. Said, it's been a couple of years since I've really looked into visualization techniques, imagination, and what some of the more recent neuroscience and experts have been saying about visualization and whether or not we can change, right? Like how, of course, we can always change and improve is my number one underlying belief, is that humans are incredibly programmable creatures, and our potential is extremely great, and most of our limitations are in our mind. So I went through and wanted to find out what belief systems people have around this topic currently. And I want to start out with some images. As you know, I often tie my ideas to imagery, and that may help some of you who are like me understand what concepts I'm trying to bring forward. So, and along with that, I want to use quotes and words and an attempt to clarify my thoughts and explain what I mean and what I've learned. So I found this image of this house floating away from a Pixar movie called Up. And someone put a quote of Albert Einstein. A lot of people really respect him, so you might find his quotes useful. It says, "Logic will get you from A to Z. Imagination will get you everywhere." So again, my focus this week has been visualization, imagination, clarity of thought, with the intention of improving communication. So shifting to a creative mind, designing your life, and you can develop and improve this. So my overview of what I have found is that shifting into a creative mindset and removing the critical mind for this portion of your visualization is really important. So making sure that you remove any criticism from your initial ideas is very important and a very important part of the process. So allow yourself to have ideas and imagination. Don't let your logical mind or reptilian mind come in and tell you that you're unsafe or that you're going to hurt yourself or that you're going to die or all of the negative consequences that could happen from this idea just yet. So let it manifest, let the visualizations come, let the imagery come, let the words come through. Don't share it with people that will initially criticize you. You will be criticizing at a later stage, and allow for that critical mind to come in. It's an extremely important step. However, in the beginning, don't criticize it too early, or allow share your idea with others that you believe will criticize it. You can design your life. So this came because I am looking into the future, and I'm trying to look exponentially into the future as much as my little brain will, and trying to design systems and automations and look at software and technology in my life that'll allow me to do more, be more, and live up to my top potential. So as I do this, it requires a lot of forward thinking, futuristic thinking, and designing your life. So this is where it's coming from. And when you do that, you have to really shift into the creative mind. Okay, and you can develop and improve this. I have found that when I move to a different space, like if I'm at my desk, this is my work area. This is where I produce work and work in a logical way, and lots of numbers, and working in systems and programs, and learning new technologies, and making sure I'm being as accurate as possible, accuracy and lots of critical thinking. So I have to separate myself from this space to design the future. So just changing your environment may be a great suggestion. It works for me, and that's what I do. You can develop and improve these skills. If you think you can't, you can't. So having a debilitating belief system around your ability to change and learn, you're constantly dragging yourself down, and you're limiting your potential and your possibilities. So we can improve and we can change. So making sure you go into a creative process with this in mind is absolutely paramount. So this is a tree, which I find interesting because of the tree of life in Kabbalah and a lot of ancient traditions. And the tree looks like a brain in this particular depiction. And this tree even has a face on it here, which I found quite interesting. So again, just opening up your mind, looking at some beautiful imagery, trying to dissect why you find this imagery appealing. And I think that a lot of colors, bright colors, help people expand their thinking, creativity, and adapt to being more open-minded if you bring in some color into your life. Imagination. So this is looking at the noun, the ability to form a picture in your mind of something that you have not seen or experienced. Okay, so it's not real yet. However, in this space, not determining whether or not it's hard to not determine whether or not you believe it can happen, but just allowing yourself to believe that it is possible in this space is very important. I think the more that we practice that, the more creative we can be. And you'll notice already there's this theme of belief systems, limiting belief systems. And if you have a limiting belief system, your imagination and your visualization is going to suffer. Your imagination is your preview of your life's coming attraction. So again, found this as a very great quote to consider adopting and thinking about, because we need to make sure that we are designing our life and not letting others design our lives for us, getting into that creative mindset. So the power of imagination makes us infinite. And I talked about this in a class recently where I created this very simplistic image or chart or graph, whatever you want to call it, timeline. The time is linear. Our past is pretty linear. We've had one course that we chose along our life. It might be windy, right? This might be better if it's just all windy. We go this way and we go that way and we go up and we go down, but it leads us to the present. And at the present, we get into this quantum realm. At every second that we pass through the present, we have additional possibilities that we can move towards. So I thought that was very interesting, that it ties well to the power of imagination makes us infinite, right? So in the present, as we're imagining our possibilities, we have infinite possibilities. And this shows that. We live in both visible and invisible worlds. One is what we see, and the other is what we imagine, which influences what we see. So if we don't even consider a possibility, we're not going to see it, right? If we just completely dismiss an idea, we're not going to see its possibilities. So giving yourself additional options may be useful, or considering them, allowing your mind, your creative mind, to consider them. So clarity in an image in the mind's eye is different than verbalizing your vision. So in my mind, I was really having to separate the imagery that I'm seeing in my mind and the words associated with the imagery, right? So gaining clarity in an image in the mind's eye is different than using words to verbalize your vision. And I think a lot of ancient texts get into this, particularly I think of the Bible, right? There's different types of books in the Bible that use different words and imagery to describe. Some are very literal and some are very visually oriented. And I believe that has to do with people's natural tendencies. Some people naturally are more verbal, and then others are more image-based. So how do we improve the mind's eye? So this was really a question that I had, because I remember there's been times in my life where I see so clearly a picture in my mind. And then there are other times where it's just so fuzzy and I want to develop it. I want to develop that vision. I don't want to lose it. I know that we have more of it when we're younger because of the way our brain develops. And one item that I meant to put in here is that we create new neurons. I believe it's every day, 700 new neurons. And by the time we're 50, all of our neurons that we had as an infant or when we were born are completely gone. So our brain does have a sequential progression, and we do create new nerve cells in our brains and throughout our nervous system. It's not as fast of a turnover as other cells in our biology, but our nerves do change. And so that leads to us realizing that we can change our minds and our brains and the way our neurons are firing and the pathways that we create and the ruts that we create in our own minds. So improving the mind's eye. As I was looking into this, I realized that, and remember, I'm a mom, so I whisper when I record these because I record these when everybody else is sleeping. I'm not trying to be creepy. I would love to add more color and tonation to my voice maybe there'll be a time when I can do that and be a little bit more theatrical for you to entertain you. But hopefully you find the information valuable anyway. So improve focus. Improving the mind's eye is also going to improve your focus. And one issue that we have in this technology or information age or the age of Aquarius, whatever you want to call it, it will improve your focus because we are so distracted. I mean, our attention spans, I'm sure you've seen all of the articles and studies on this as well. Our attention spans are decreasing, and we really have to fight against this tendency that our brains have to go after dopamine. We're so rewarded by all these dopamine hits that we're getting. We can improve our attention spans. And a lot of these techniques to improve your vision, your mind's eye, will help you improve your focus. And me as an artist, I really enjoyed learning about some of these visualization techniques because it is so helpful in art as well. If you like to draw, make sure you're practicing that. You're setting aside time aside every day, even if it's just 15 minutes, just like a writer would journal. If you're an artist and you really have a knack for being in your, if you have a tendency for visualization, making sure that you're continuing to practice that, because if you don't use it, you lose it. Your mind will use those neurons for something else. So looking at an object, noticing the detail, looking away, as I was reading research about neurons, there was a lot about looking at an object, closing your eyes and focusing on that object and all the detail and not letting other thoughts come in. Sounds very similar to meditation, right? But it also sounds very similar to an artist looking at a bowl of fruit and drawing every detail of that fruit basket. So I think that if we continue to draw and make sure that we set time aside for that, even if you're not good at it, if you want to develop this, I believe it will really benefit you if you can go to an art class. Commit to going to an art class. There will be beginner art classes that will teach you some techniques on how to observe objects in this 3D space. And everyone can learn how to have more control over their hands and the connection between the eye and the hand-eye coordination. Right? You may not have the potential to ever be a Leonardo da Vinci or anything like that. But if you want to improve this part of your mind, this visualization, it may be a very proficient and efficient way to improve creativity, improve your imagination, or at least not regress in these areas. That's the other thing, is if we don't use it, we lose it. So, and you'll be learning something new. So your neurons will be very stimulated by that. And of course, you'll improve your visualization techniques. Look at the object and then close your eyes and focus. That is one technique that really worked for people. Okay, so dominant tendencies. So I already touched on this. And this has been very well established in learning. So if you've ever tried to learn how to learn, or been a teacher or tried to teach a class in any way and done any kind of research on human development, that kinesthetic learners, visual learners, and verbal or words, right? And these are the three areas, or auditory. These are the three areas that most people fall into. There are subcategories. You can get super complicated. I mean, there's whole master's degrees on this. And I know I'm oversimplifying, but I think simplification will be good for looking at these visualization powers. So there's not just one way to visualize, okay? Some people will have more clarity of thought in images, while others will have more clarity of thought in words and auditory and verbalization, and others will have more clarity in thought in their bodies. This also goes down to the intelligences, right? Some people are kinesthetically intelligent, and I respect these men. I am only using them as an example. They're incredible athletes. The Diaz brothers, right? If you hear them in an interview, you would think these people are not the highest of IQ, right? Their power may not be in their intellectual IQ. However, they are the reason why they get through those fights so well is because they're extremely kinesthetically intelligent. There are different types of intelligences. I think when we think of intelligence, we only think of the intellectual quotient. We don't think of these other areas. So keep that in mind. So there are people that are able to visualize and they feel sensations in their body when they visualize. Okay, it can be tied to an emotion, of course. All of these can be tied to an emotion. And if you do tie them to an emotion, it will be more likely to stick, and you'll be more likely to fulfill that vision. However, just looking at it without the emotions, people can visualize physical sensations. They can visualize how something will smell, what the sounds will be, what the experience will be kinesthetically in that environment. Okay. And then, of course, through movement, and they can visualize what their body will be doing in those scenarios. Okay, so that's like a kinesthetic visualization. Sorry, I'm slurping. I'm like, if any of you have listened to me before, I need to work on my voice. I talk a lot, so my voice breaks. It sounds like I'm going to cry sometimes. And it's only because I have a weak voice, I guess. I don't know what I need to do to fix that. It might be my next presentation. But visual, seeing clear images, seeing words. So when you close your eyes, some people see words. Okay, they're not necessarily seeing an image, they're seeing words. And that is a form of visualization. That is it's a creative mind trying to do what it can to visualize. And now all of us may be able to do all of these. However, people can be dominant in one or two or equal in all three, right? So try to figure out which one you are best at and develop that, and perhaps work on some of the others, but be aware. I think just finding the awareness that, I thought I was broken. I'm just sitting there going, I cannot see this clearly. Like I said in the beginning, maybe I'm broken. Maybe it's because I'm more of a kinesthetic visualizer and not as much I do have some visual, I do see some images. However, I think I tend to lean towards more of the kinesthetic is a stronger tie for me. Okay, and then seeing words and hearing words. So you can see that some of these do overlap. There is some overlap. And if you can learn how to tie all three in some way to a specific vision and gain clarity, that I believe will be very, very powerful. I've heard the example of Conor McGregor. So before he has a championship fight or any fight, he really visualizes everything. He visualizes what moves he's going to do, what he thinks the opponent's going to do, how he's going to respond to each action that the opponent does, and visualizing what it's going to be every step of the way, what it's going to be like backstage, what it's going to be like before he walks out, does the walk to the ring, who's going to be in his corner, what they're going to look like, and what he's going to be wearing, what songs are going to be playing, how it's going to feel to sit down in the corner, what the water is going to feel like, what the crowd's going to sound like, what the crowd's going to be chanting, how the towel is going to feel on his back, and how the Vaseline's going to feel on his face, and all of these tries to visualize every single detail and have clarity and thought in the detail of that very important day. And that will help him reverse engineer everything he needs to do to prepare for that day. So if he's visualizing going through a fight with an opponent and he thinks the opponent's going to pull this move, and he realizes that, he's having a hard time, getting out of the move, he can incorporate that into his training. Okay, what areas of my body need to be stronger so I can get out of this? Maybe, if I get into a rear naked choke, maybe I need to work on being able to hold my breath longer, or I don't know, just a bunch of different ways to incorporate these problems that could come up in the match that could help him win the fight, right? And prepare. Okay, so this is a simple little test. I have a link, I'll put the link down below to a test. So this has to do with learning. So if you've never done anything like this before, I believe you'll find it extremely valuable. But going through and answering these questions, like choosing a book to read for fun, what type would you pick? Would you pick lots of pictures, lots of words, or word searches, or crossword puzzles? In high school, how did you usually study? Did you do index cards? Did you have someone ask you questions and answer out loud? Did you read the book or your notes and review pictures or charts? So you go through and you answer each one of these questions. It's a very, very short list of questions, 5 questions. And then if you answered mostly A, you are a visual learner. If you answered mostly B, you are auditory. And if you answered mostly C, you're kinesthetic. Okay, I am certainly kinesthetic. I like flashcards. I use flashcards for a test. I am going to crush the test. I've tried incorporating some of these other ones, and it's not as beneficial. I have had more challenges gaining clarity of thought around putting my thoughts into words and communicating that. I know that I'm a dominant kinesthetic learner. So perhaps that's why. And perhaps my visualization is more kinesthetic than I realize. I do, when I've planned out events before, I do kind of tune into the smells and the situation that I'm going to be in and what the situation is going to look like and how my body's going to feel in that situation. However, I'm not sure. I think I can do all 3, and I don't even know if I'm dominant in one. So I find this quite interesting. I want to get better at it. I am getting better at it. I have room to grow in this area. I think I have a lot of room to grow, and that's why I'm picking this topic, because I think once I get more clarity of thought, once I increase it a certain amount, I think I'm going to gain a lot from that. I think that, like I said, I think it's what I look at, because I love learning. I love researching and diving into topics that I'm interested in, and I'm kind of bringing you on for the ride. And this helps me cement these ideas in my mind, because these are things that we can all improve on. If we don't use it, we lose it. I have looked at these topics before. This isn't my first time, but I'm revisiting them and digging up new research that I found and listening to the latest information in these topics. I did this, probably 5 years ago and then 10 years ago. And, we've all heard about some of these techniques. And I like to remind myself that if I want to stay on top of this and improve, then I need to continue to learn and take action and maybe form some new habits surrounding these. So what had worked for me in the past is drawing. As I just talked about yesterday, I think that drawing is an extremely valuable visualization technique. And if you like to draw, or even if you don't like to draw, I think everyone has the ability to do art in some way and improve their ability to notice details in the 3D world. I noticed when I married my husband that he has an extremely critical eye, and and there are certain people that can absorb information around their surroundings extremely accurately. And I can do that, but I'm not as mindful about it as he is. He's more naturally mindful about it. He doesn't have to train himself to be this way. I've had to train myself to be more situationally, or through, noticing the details of everything. I'm more of I see the high level overview, but he really sees the high level and the details. So living with him has helped me realize that, because I thought everybody was like me. I thought everybody saw the same amount of detail that I saw. And no, there are people that see an immense more amount of detail, and they're able to take in more detail in their environment and notice, just by glancing at a room, that wall's crooked, or there's a sock in the corner, just behind the couch. And I'm like, wait, what? There is? I'm like, I just saw the pretty painting on the wall. It's like, yeah, I saw that too, but it's kind of messy. I'm like, where I'm just focusing on the parts I like, he sees everything, the parts he likes and the parts he doesn't like. So I found that interesting as well. So we all have certain tendencies, or a dominant way of looking at things. And I believe where I left off was clarity in image in the mind's eye is different than verbalizing your vision. So this is something, as an artist, when I would try to, in the beginning phases of an idea, I would be excited and I would share it with other people, and everybody would trample all over it. And I just thought I had bad ideas. Now I realize I wasn't giving my idea time to develop. And so there is a sequence of events that you have to go through before you reveal your idea to someone that is going to criticize it. You don't protect that idea. You only allow for the right brain activity, the futuristic, the more creative side, the visionary side of the brain, to really play with that idea and ask yourself questions about your idea and journal about it and make lists and all that. We'll go over some of those techniques here in a moment. They're quite simple, really. They can be broken down quite simply, but you don't reveal that idea until you've gone through questioning, giving yourself questions, and then going to a friend that knows they're not allowed to completely criticize your idea. They're just supposed to ask you questions about your idea until you've gone through that phase. And then once that's more developed, you can take it to more critical eyes. So as I was going through this, I found some quotes that I liked and some quotes that I didn't like. And I don't know if I didn't like them because they didn't not just because they didn't resonate with me. Perhaps they're just thinking about this in a completely different way than I am, or maybe they're just wrong. I don't really know which one. But clarity adorns deep thought. Okay, yes. Yes, and this looks like it's a very ancient, wise, source here. Clarity is the counterbalance of profound thought. So to me, those two contradict each other. And perhaps this person is relating to someone who cannot verbalize their idea properly. And if they developed the ability to communicate and verbalize, stand by. Oh my God, my cattle dog was getting into my kid's Legos. He likes Legos. It's hilarious. So to me, this sounds like an artist's frustration, similar to what I've felt in the past, but I believe that there is a way to improve that, to improve your clarity of thought and communicate your thought in a very easy to understand way. If you practice doing this. I think we can all get better at this, because I've seen people, just incredible people, have just this immense clarity of thought, and they're able to break down their ideas, these super, to me, that seems super complex, in like 30 seconds. You're like, yeah, that's it. They hit it right on the head. Okay. Clarity comes from action, not thought. Okay. I can see that a little bit. Take action to write, take action to think it through and ask yourself questions, take action to write your lists and develop your clarity, take action and talk to a friend that you know that's not going to be too critical of your idea in the beginning, take action and when you're ready, go to critical people. So I wanted to talk about the way that this relates to focus, right? Because when we're talking about clarity, we need to also be able to focus. And I think that this is getting to be more and more difficult for people as time goes on, because of the way these ads are developed and how it's trying to capture everybody's attention, and the way Instagram and TikTok, everything's getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter because people's attention spans are getting shorter. So learn how to develop skills. So I've talked about this before. You have to be in between open-minded and critical thinking. We don't want to be so open-minded that we're completely naive and don't question anything that comes in. And then the critical thinking on the left side of the brain can get very like granite and not absorb any new information, and just be kind of set in their ways and not take in new information. So we don't want to be on the totally right side or totally left side. Now, there may be a phase where you're more in this, right? More on this side. You're taking it in, you're considering it, right? And then you're asking yourself some critical questions. Does this even make sense? And then when you suss out that maybe it doesn't follow certain lines of logic and doesn't apply to your problem in the way that you had hoped it would, then you can throw it out. But in the beginning, you do want to be over here more, and then allow some critical thinking at some point. So I'm not saying throw out critical thinking at all, but in this process of working on visualizing the future, we do have to be more right-brained, right? You have to start out more on this right-brained side before we can go over to the critical thinking side. So I just wanted to bring that up. And as you're working through this, you may have to take breaks, and it's okay to take breaks and go on walks and gardening and cleaning, ice baths, painting, writing, dancing. So this is the phase where it allows your right brain to process things. So you have your shower ideas, and most people understand what I mean when I say you get these ideas that just pop up in the shower. It's because you're allowing that right brain to process some of the new information that you have put in recently. So taking that time to do those meditation or exercise, breath work, just playing with Play-Doh, playing with Legos, cooking. I've had this happen with cooking before, painting, drawing. Okay, so just a reminder there before we go into this next phase. So as we work on our idea, we want to have a clear mind. So obviously, if we want clarity of thought before we go into this creative process of trying to create our own futures, we need to have a clear mind. So that involves a mind dump. You want to clear your emotions as well. So bringing in certain baggage or negative self-talk into the process is going to limit the ability to do this. So you can still go through these practices, because as you go through the practices, you're going to maybe have some emotions come up, or some yucky thoughts that you realize that you didn't have, or some yucky belief systems that you want to try to work on or get rid of. And then, of course, having a balanced mind. No one is perfect. So if you're hitting any brick walls in here, just be patient with yourself, continue to work through it. Some days are better than others. Some days I can go through and visualize the next week or the next year or the next 5 years and the next 10 years very easily. And then other days it's like, oh my gosh, why is my brain not working through this? Okay. All right. So if you are hitting a place where you do your mind dump and you want to do futuristic work and planning your life, the farther into the future and the bigger your goals get, the more emotions are going to come up for you and for me, for us. We are going to have more emotions come up. So as those emotions come up, they might be real quiet whispers in the beginning. And so if you are sensing that, or hearing or seeing something limiting, some sort of limiting belief system creep into your conscious mind, you do want to sit in a safe, quiet place and really focus on that and try to bring it to the surface. Because some of these belief systems are hidden in our subconscious. And you really want to make sure to bring them up and give yourself that space to hear them out and observe. And we cannot change something until we acknowledge its existence, right? So if we just keep rejecting it, it may just stay in there and manifest and continue to develop our future for us in a way that, why do we keep limiting ourselves? Why does this keep, why do I keep rejecting this? Or why is this not coming to fruition? It's probably because you're telling yourself you're unworthy in some way, or you're not identifying with that. You're not the sort of person that can have those things or live that kind of life, or that kind of life isn't available to someone like me. So observe your thoughts, accept or reject the thought, and you can reject it. Okay, you can reject it, often replacing it with something else stated in a positive way can really help with that. All right. And as you move towards the more positive belief system, you want to make sure that you're showing yourself evidence of goals that you are completing, even if they're stupid or seem small. So one of the things that I've really been trying to post about and bring people forward and bring positivity forward for people is do 10 push-ups a day. Like if you write down, I'm going to do 10 push-ups a day or 15 push-ups a day so you can get 100 a week or over 100 a week. And then you do it, that is very stimulating to this side of the brain. It goes, oh my gosh, I manifested and I created this outcome for myself, right? If it seems small, however, it gives you a sort of dopamine hit and a serotonin hit, especially if you take the time, if you sit in space and you acknowledge your accomplishment, it will seek more of it. Okay. And then it'll seek more of it. How can we get more of this? So keep that in mind too. Take action if needed, rest, drink filtered water, focus on self-care. So when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about an intense emotion that comes up when you really find what that belief is, and it brings up some really strong emotions for you. Definitely take the time to cry or express that emotion. Don't push against it. So if you push against it, it could bring up anxiety. It's going to bring up some sort of fear because you have a higher feeling of fear of feeling the emotion than the emotion itself. So the emotion is going to suck either way. These negative thoughts, these negative emotions, this negative self-talk is going to suck no matter what you do. Whether you push it away with fear because you're afraid of feeling it, or you just go ahead and feel it, it's going to suck either way. So you might as well get it over with. That's how I look at it. So let's get it over with. You're not going to die. It's just a feeling. Feelings do suck and feelings do hurt. Or they don't stab you in the arm. They don't cut off your arm. They don't cut off your foot. You're not going to bleed. You're not going to die. Okay, so just keep telling yourself you're not going to die. Let's work through this and just let it happen. Just let it flow over you. Okay. Especially if you're crying or you're feeling strong emotions, be sure to drink some nice tea or water. You are going to lose some hydration through these processes. It's a strong chemical reaction that's going on in your brain. Obviously, if you're exhibiting tears in some way, you're losing water. So you want to make sure to replenish that and tell yourself you're taking care of yourself as you're drinking the water. And then focus on some self-care as long as you need to. Some people, as you get better at this, or if it's an emotion that's not getting stuck, because some emotions do get stuck and it's hard to explain why. Or maybe you just want to feel negative for a little while. That's okay. There are things that make sense to feel sad about for longer than 5 minutes, right? Things that happen in our lives that um, are really tough, and it's going to take some time. We're going to feel some negative emotions for a longer amount of time when they come up. So be sure to focus on self-care in those moments. Get outside in the sun, do some grounding, get in water, take a shower, do easy walks, try to enjoy nature. So these are just some little tips that I have found that help me as I go through these processes. And unfortunately, negative emotions do come up. Is there the reason why we experience positive emotions? If we didn't have negative emotions, we wouldn't be able to experience the positive ones in a deep and meaningful way. And the more tragedy, or the more negative the emotion we can feel, the more positive of the emotion we can feel. And there's nothing wrong with that. We can have emotions. It's part of being a human. So clarity of thought, just kind of circling back to this. I know I got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I always think that the emotional piece is so important. I think it's something that a lot of people don't talk about. I used to be on the disc profile a high D, very results oriented, and I still am, but now I've changed. And you can change. I know people think that you're locked in forever, but you can change. I'm an extremely high I now. And it's because I have learned a lot about emotions and human behavior and how important and how much it drives our outcomes in our life. If I want to drive my outcome, if I'm so excited about results, I better learn how people work, right? And how I work. Clarity of thought, verbal, voice, and story. So what is communication? So just to break down communication, if my goal is to have my vision of my future and I'm backing into what I need to do, what that person in the future would tell me to do, or what that person would do on a day-to-day basis to meet that goal, I need to have some vision, right? I need to be able to imagine a life exponentially better than what I have now. And as I look at that, obviously emotions are going to come up, right? And we talked about how to work on some of those emotions. And then it would be helpful to have some clarity of thought. The clearer your vision and the clearer you can communicate that vision to other people, the more help you get along the way. The more you can hire other people to help you with tasks, the more you can communicate in your sales strategy or your business strategy or in your personal life with your spouse, with your friends and your family. There's so many benefits to having clarity of thought. And if you have clarity of thought, you're probably a pretty good communicator. So all these things overlap. As I was researching it, I'm like, it's hard to untangle these and put them into different buckets. So clarity of thought has some focus on the verbal, right? We have to get clarity of thought in our vision, and that's fine to be kinesthetic or visual or word-based. However, at some point, we do have to get in the verbal if we want to be able to communicate our thought to another person, which is so hard for me. I am not strong in this. This is my weakest point that I have. And I've realized I just really admire people that are able to articulate their ideas in the verbal and use words to do so, and writing. It's amazing to me because that's the area that I suck the most at. So one area to focus on as well in communication is voice. So we've got tone, enunciation, projection, and volume. So there are certain tones that make sense when we're communicating a thought. If you don't want to yell at somebody, I love you, doesn't make sense. You're like, I love you. You know, they might actually believe you more, right? They'll take you more seriously. Okay. And then story, positive or negative. Are you telling a negative story or a positive story? It's okay to tell both, but also to be mindful of how to tell a story in both contexts. You can tell you can have a story and tell it in a negative point of view or from a positive point of view. Like, I have this glass of water. This glass of water is half full. It is full of wonderful, nourishing water that is going to hydrate all of your cells and empower you for your next workout session. It could be this glass right here. It is half empty. And this glass is not completely clean. I can't, there's a couple of spots on the glass. This water looks really dirty and yucky. I bet that it's got all kinds of chemicals in it that can really harm you and not really help you in your next workout, right? It's the same glass of water. You can tell the story of the water in so many different ways. So doing both, I think, is really powerful in communicating. You can really show all the positive things and tell a story around your product or your idea or the life that you're looking to create. And you can do this to yourself and for other people. At some point, when you need to communicate an idea to another person. And you can weigh the pros and the cons, right? It's all a story that we're telling ourselves or other people. Okay. So clarity. The only way really that I found, so finding clarity of thought information was not easy, okay? There was a lot about vision and there wasn't a whole lot of tactical information. The only tactical information I found on clarity of thought is writing, which makes sense because writing are our thoughts. Words on paper is us documenting our thoughts, and it is one way to observe our thoughts. So this is why journaling is so popular with billionaires and multimillionaires, right? Because they have learned that if they journal, they are developing their thoughts and they're seeing their belief systems. And again, the first step is awareness. So you have to be aware of limiting belief systems, and they pop up sometimes out of nowhere. So giving yourself that space to journal is one way of gaining clarity of thought and observing your thoughts. Making a list. I thought this one was very interesting. Finding keywords that are within your idea that will help you define and further your writing and thought development for your idea. Okay, then we've got an A to Z list. So writing out the alphabet A to Z and brainstorming words that you find associate with your idea. And it really helps you find new words and new ways of describing what you're trying to describe. Almost like a thesaurus would help you when you're writing, not use just the same words over and over again, or find a better word for what you're trying to describe. So journaling and then rereading and rewriting over and over and over. So as you are journaling, you're just letting it free flow, doing a mind dump of lists, and then doing a mind dump of your idea, just getting it out on paper, letting that rest, letting that marinate, I think is a very good idea. Don't journal and then go back and rework it right away. I think letting it marinate and go and doing some other activities and letting that subconscious work on the problem, maybe have a sleep, because when you sleep, your subconscious is really working and you are creating new neurons. And if you're telling yourself you have a problem that you want to develop and a solution you want to develop, it may work on that at night while you sleep and while you're creating those 700 new neurons every day. Look at it maybe the next day, give yourself a sleep, reread, and then rewrite in more clear terms. Ask yourself questions about your idea and the idea that you want to communicate to other people. So asking yourself some questions as you're writing. So as you're rereading your journal or rereading your lists, really asking yourself questions throughout that process and then answering your own questions. And at some point, you're going to want to open this up to a friend that you trust and let them know that you're not looking for criticism right now. You're just looking for questions about your idea so you can continue to develop. And the very, very last piece is critique. So the very, very last part is criticism. So you don't want to bring up too much left brain criticism and squash the idea, because if you bring critique in during the first phase of the idea, everybody's going to tell you it's stupid and it's a bad idea. And you'll still, if you're not fully developed and you haven't fully committed yourself to your idea through all these questions and through all this processing, you might not really believe in your idea. Okay. And so you might not even just give it room to be and room to grow. Okay, if you squash it too early. So again, we're looking at self-reflection. So part of this process, imagination, visualization, communication, clarity of thought, has to do with self-reflection. We have to observe the self to change our environment, to change our schedule, to change our future, design our life. If we don't do it, someone else will. And we won't know exactly how we ended up where we are. So conscious, so being an aware person or an enlightened person, has to do with internal and external knowledge. So you have to gain external knowledge of how the world works and eternal truths, and then gaining knowledge of your own psychology and how we uniquely react to inputs, either from your own thoughts or from other people and actions, environment, etc. And this, my friends, is a lifelong journey. You never reach pure, blissful enlightenment and a transcendental meditation, and then it stays there forever. Okay. This is constantly reworked. There are constantly new challenges, and we are constantly being presented opportunities to learn and grow. So this is a picture that I've shown before. This person is looking into their own mind, and there's some cobwebs in there. There's some weeds. They have some gardening to do, right? Which we all do. And I think that this does a great artistic job of giving you a visual image of that. And just remember that it's control versus steering. So we're not gripping the wheel and controlling everyone around us and everything and trying to manipulate others with the information that we gain from psychology, right? Life, we're looking at this for the self and taking responsibility for ourselves and getting out of a victim mindset and getting into a growth mindset, okay? And trying to get rid of limiting belief systems, because life is one big creative process. We have our own blank canvas to design our life in a way that we want. We can't control everything and every situation along the way. That is not what I'm saying when I say design your life. We drive the car by steering, right? But we cannot control the road or the other drivers. So if we hit a pothole along the way, we can't necessarily control every pothole, right? And the tire might pop, and yeah, maybe if we would have paid a little bit more attention, we could have avoided the pothole. But for the most part, we're not going, there's going to be bumps along the way. And our mind is our car. We have to enter in the GPS coordinates to be able to go where we want to go. Otherwise, we're just going to be mindlessly driving around town. And who knows where we're going to end up when we run out of gas. We get to know our car. So everybody has a different type of mind, a different type of brain, different strengths, different weaknesses. And finding your strengths and your weaknesses, finding what you suck at. It's okay to suck at something. Like me, I suck at words. Writing is not my strong suit. Clarity of mind is not my strong suit with words. However, maybe being aware of that and saying, okay, if I can just get better at this by 70%, even though I'm way down here, if I get better by 70%, almost double what I'm doing now, yeah, I'm not as good as this other guy that's way up here, but I got a 70% increase in this one area, and I'm way up here in this other area, right? So knowing what your car's capabilities are is so important, right? Do you have an off-road vehicle? Do you have a Ferrari? Do you have a Hyundai? Do you have an electric car? What kind of car do you have? Because it's going to determine the best way to get to your destination. And it's okay to be a hiker. It's okay to take the scenic route. Some people want to take the scenic route. There's nothing wrong with that versus the Ferrari that's going 100 miles an hour all the way to Vegas, right? There's a lot of fun ways to get to Vegas off-road. Maybe you would go off-road, you know? We are taking the scenic route, the freeway, side streets, or avoiding traffic. So there's kind of the efficient way. I don't care how I get there as long as I'm not in traffic. There's the scenic route. There's the off-road way. It's okay to go a different way. Getting there, at least you're making progress towards your destination and learning about your car and your mind or your mind along the way, okay, in this analogy. So just as a reminder, being outside the mind and inputting information you control, not what others control. So we're in a new age, and as many of you know, you've heard about this, whether you want to call it the information, the technology age, the age of Aquarius. It's different than 100 years ago. 100 years ago, we might have been in our backyard hoeing away in our garden, and we didn't have these external inputs constantly coming into our brains every second. We're on Instagram, we're getting pop-ups, or we're on the internet, we're getting pop-ups and email ads and radio ads and television ads and influencers and all this stuff. I mean, we're getting so many more hands in our brain trying to control our actions than ever before. And there's more data out there on human and analytics on human behavior and how you will react to colors and shapes and messaging and timing of messaging and the amount of time the message is and what your attention span is. Some of these marketers know more about your psychology than you do. So just being mindful of that and not letting everything else steer your life, taking some control back and practicing that control will completely transform your life. Okay, and one thing that I talked about before is that many of us are sitting in some limiting beliefs and we think that we like it. We're telling ourselves we like it. And when I saw this emoji, and I talked about it in one of my other videos, I used the word shit. Tastes like shit. Sabor a mierda. Okay. This is controversial, this Matrix 4. I found it to be quite wonderful. I really, really liked it. And I was first brought to this by Mark Passio. He did a wonderful de-occulting on some imagery in this movie. And he's so detailed and he notices so much, similar to my husband. It's funny, they're both Leos. It's like a Leo trait, maybe. that noticing all this detail in this movie is so incredible. And other people on Reddit noticed it as well. For those who love to eat shit, right? It's like we're given all these subliminal messages that most people aren't even going to see this in the movie. And I think it's making us, the point is it's making us aware that there are other images throughout the day that come into our mind that we're not even aware of and that we're being influenced by. And don't let yourself be here and just stagnant in the pond, right? Just stagnant in the shit, in the pond of the shit, right? So I know that's a little bit of a negative way to end it. However, I am not afraid to talk about the positives and negatives again, looking at your weaknesses, not just, yeah, it is important to make sure that you're reframing and looking at a positive outcome. Like I said, in the creative process, you want to stay super positive in that process, not be too critical. But at some point, you will have to use that critical mind and come in to really hone in your ideas and gain even more clarity of thought. You don't want to live in la la land either. We live in this 3D space on planet Earth. So just bringing balance to these tactics and being vision, imagination, communication, and clarity of thought. Hopefully you found this interesting at the very least, even if you didn't learn anything. If you didn't learn anything, hopefully this was a good reminder of what you already know, because if we don't use it, we lose it. Continue those mindful practices, my friends, and I will see you next week. Oh, like, subscribe, share with a friend, comment below, hit the bell, ding, 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 all that fun stuff.